All right, so much art history and never enough time to cover it all. So let's go run through the art museum. We are still in chapter 29. There are 13 styles of art that I'm going to cover in chapter 29. We're beginning number 3, Cubism. I bet you've heard this guy's name before, right? Yeah, we're going to start Cubism with Pablo Picasso. Probably one of the most famous names in art history. He was born in Spain, but he moved to Paris, and all of his important work was done in Paris. Now, Pablo Picasso is of interest to me because this is the first artist in in all of art history that we've been discussing since August that crosses over with my timeline. So I was born in 1971. He dies in 1973. So here I am as a baby reading our textbook, Gardner's Art Through the Ages, an actual photo. Actually, yeah, no, the photos of me don't look that good. Yeah, right. All right, but check these out. Pablo Picasso can actually draw. That drawing on the left is a plaster cast, so he's drawing a sculpture, and he did that one in at the age of 12 to 13 years old. The one on the right, he was about a 15-year-old boy when he drew that. And here we have a painting, and he was probably about 15 years old when he painted this. So Pablo Picasso can draw. He can paint. Now, there is a period of time where he paints in only blue. We call this the blue period. I'm not going to spend any time on it. I just want you to know that it happened. And then there's a period of time where he painted with these rose colors, which we call the rose period. I could spend some time on it, but I want to move on to Cubism. I want to move on to this painting right here. Does anybody need more time with this slide? La Demoiselle d'Avignon. I'm sure I mispronounced that, but that's all right. I'm Texan. This photo gives you a sense of the size of the artwork. It's a rather large. In Texas, we call that a big one. And this is Picasso's first major milestone painting. What do you see in the picture? Yes, people. What kind of people? Women. Yeah, yeah, naked women. All right, just like a good art history painting, a bunch of naked women. All right. So these women are actually prostitutes. All right. And our point of view is that of a client selecting a woman for the evening. As they pull back the curtains and display themselves, we can pick and choose which one we want. So, and how do we know that it is these are prostitutes? Well, it's in the title. Demoiselle, it means damsel or lady. That was a common euphemism for prostitute. And Avignon was a street in Barcelona famous for its brothels and prostitution. Does anybody know where Barcelona is? In Spain. So Picasso has a friend, Georges Braque, and after he paints this, he shows it to a couple of his close friends, and they have negative responses for it. In fact, Georges Braque calls it or says it's like being forced to drink kerosene, is what he says about this painting. And so Picasso keeps it hidden in the studio for years, not showing anybody else. So this painting is shocking even to his closest artist friends for both its content and its formal experimentation. The painting is widely thought to be immoral when it was finally exhibited in public in 1916. And Braque was one of the few artists who studied it intently in 1907, leading directly to his collaboration with Picasso. In this painting, none of the figures are interacting with each other, and there's a very shallow space. I talk about this all year long. They have taken that space and they've squinched it real short. That these are women are standing right in front of curtains, and so we have maybe like 3 feet of space in this for them to all be standing around like this. But even the space between them is fractured and broken up. There's no unity of perspective or dimension, and the space between the figures looks confused. It almost looks like we're looking at this through broken glass. And he has completely abandoned the sense of space that has been in traditional art. And we know he can do it. We've seen him do it in the paintings when he was a teenager. We know he's capable of it, but he is choosing to turn his back on this. And instead, we have a flatter space, much like this. And it kind of reminds me of like just being uh, being pushed up against glass or a gate or something. All right, now what helps to flatten the space is that if you separate the women from the background, it's they're painted the same way. The women are fractured. The background is fractured. I worked all afternoon on this. Yeah, I did it in paint. Yeah, so that's some advanced art right there. Advanced digital art. I'm proud of myself. All right. And we can see just how far he has come in turning his back on the traditional way of showing nude women. No, these are other artists. Yeah. No, these are traditional artists. Yeah. Right. Right. No, and also if he painted that way, well, I mean, we saw his painting of the person kneeling in the church, but I think if he painted like these over here, it would be very difficult for him to switch back to this right here. Look at the skin tones on Picasso's painting. All right, it's that peach skin tone that comes right out of the tube of the paint. It is an unmodulated color. The artist that painted these other ones, let me get my laser pointer. The artist that painted these other ones does so much modulation of the paint to get those skin tones just right and to make it look like the body has depth to it to make shadows and highlights. And he hasn't done any of that with these women over here. All right, it's just it squeezes out the color and then paints it up there. And there's no. It's almost like when you're a child and you're coloring in, and you have your box of 8 crayons that you just put down a color just to put down a color. Right, it's that level. Right. And even if we compare this to Le Bonheur de Vivre in the Fauve painting, these odd colors, the pinks and the greens and the yellows, are a little bit more appetizing or a little bit more friendly to the eye than Picasso's harsh use of the flesh tones. This figure over here is most definitely inspired by Degas and his figures. Although I cannot tell if Picasso's woman is either facing towards us or away from us. It is as if she has the same pose and we walk around her and see different parts because this elbow right here, like the head resting on the hand, leaning on the elbow on the knee, that tells me she's facing us. But this right here, this line right here looks like the line of a spine. And this right here looks like she's facing away from us. And then the way that this leg is painted right here, it could be, I guess it's facing away from us because this part of the leg you can see covers this part of the leg, but it's still rather ambiguous. It could be facing us. It could be facing away from us. Don't know. Do you remember when I talked about Cezanne and we looked at different points of view of Cezanne and then we put it all into one picture and it's like a time machine? Here we have another time machine. This face right here is inspired by ancient Iberian art. We haven't discussed Iberian art, but it's like a prehistoric art from Spain. We focused on the Mesopotamian. And then these two faces right here are most definitely inspired by African masks. The sketch on the left is a sketch by Picasso. So he had planned a different composition than the one he ended up with. What is different about the sketch and the painting? Some are wearing clothes. Who are they that are wearing clothes? Men, right? There's men in the picture, and I'm wondering who are these men? Right. So it'd be the clients. All right. However, this guy right here has what looks like a clipboard. It is much like the reason I showed you Toulouse-Lautrec, these Toulouse-Lautrec paintings of the women in the brothel being inspected by the health inspector. So here we have what looks to be like a health inspector. So are these women right here, are they welcoming a client or are they getting ready for a health inspection? So now, and when we look at these two paintings, in this sketch right here, all the women are looking at this guy, right? So the health inspector. But now all the women are looking at the viewer in front of it. So the question is, are you a client? Are you here to hire one of them? Or are you the health inspector? But because this painting predicted some characteristics of Cubism, and this painting is generally considered Cubism, but proper Cubism hasn't started yet. This is the first painting that shows Cubist tendencies, and it's usually called pre-Cubist or proto-Cubist. But despite the sexual nature of this painting, it's not very alluring at all or enticing, is it? These women are repulsive. This is where the disgendered perspective of the medical student comes in. This is where the disengaged perspective of the medical student comes in. That they're not looking at him trying to attract him. They're looking at him like, oh, this is business. This is, yeah, it's not going to be pleasant. The next few minutes are not going to be pleasant. All right, now let's take a look at Georges Braque. Take a look at his artwork here. And what kind of, what style does that look like to you guys? It's Fauvism, right? We're going to go back to Lestock. Do you guys remember Lestock? It's right here in the very south of France. Cezanne painted there. And here is, I want you to know this artwork right here. Houses at Lestock. This is an important artwork because it's responsible for how the Cubists got their name. Do you guys remember this one? Do you remember this art critic who came up with the term fauves, right? That means wild beasts. He called them a wild beast. And they said, hey, we like it. We're going to be a bunch of wild beasts. We're going to be the fauves. Well, he does the same thing here. So the artwork is on display, and he describes it as reducing everything, places, figures, and houses, to geometric schemas, to cubes. And he uses the term bizarres cubiques. Oh, bizarre cubique, which is cubic oddities. And that term caught on, right? They call themselves the Cubists. There's some influence by Picasso, this radical simplification of form and the use of geometric shapes to define objects. But he is also heavily, heavily influenced by Cezanne. Do you see the influence by Cezanne? Do you see the same colors, the same kinds of brushstrokes, how the buildings are not quite complete? So Cezanne treats landscape as flat vertical plane. He breaks down nature into its geometric forms. And all the paint strokes are the same, the foreground and the background, which flattens the space. So the only difference that makes it look like there's space is different color. In Cezanne's paintings, he has that mountain, it has a very purplish kind of look to it. All objects in the scene are broken up into blocks of color. And this is the earliest, in his earliest Cubist landscapes, Braque used ochres, greens, and blues, very much like Cezanne. And here we're comparing the painting to a photograph of the site. And you can see that the details have been eliminated in order to emphasize the basic geometric forms. And what he's done is he's stacked these houses right on top of each other, much like if you would see like these houses or these apartments over here on the right that are built up on a very steep hill, and it looks like they just go straight up. But he's flattened the space, just like the space looks flattened in that photograph on the right. All right, I want to talk about analytical cubism. It's the first phase of cubism, and synthetic cubism is the second phase of cubism. In analytical, it looks like the painters are analyzing the world to death. It's giving you lots of information in a fragmented form. And cubism is a way to see the world from multiple perspectives. All right, well, analytical cubism is mainly Georges Braque and Pablo Picasso teaming up to make awesome art, just like a couple of tag team wrestlers. These two would team up to create one of the most avant-garde, groundbreaking, evolutionary art movements ever. And they are the two most important cubists, Georges Braque of France and Pablo Picasso of Spain. So they worked really closely with each other. They met regularly, they shared ideas, and they pushed each other artistically. Now, with this analytic cubism, I want you to know three main subjects that are inspired by the tradition and history of art. One of the defining features of Cubism is that it engaged with the European painting tradition. They used traditional subjects. The first of them is a figure with a musical instrument. So we have a traditional painting on the left, and then we have a Cubist painting on the right. Do you see the similarity? And the reason for these musical references is practical. Musical instruments are more complex and interesting forms than the glassware or bottles, and musical instruments are easy to identify by parts. This allows the cubist to abstract them and still remain identifiable. Braque and Picasso both had instruments in their studios, and music was also important to Cubism. It is an abstract language that is suggestive rather than concretely referential. It means you can't touch music. That different people can listen to a piece of music and have vastly different ideas go on in their head. So the Cubist paintings, with their abstract space, are like music. They are visual orchestras of painted forms in which shifting patterns suggest far more than they clearly depict. Another traditional subject matter is still life, and you can see the similarities in these two pictures. And then a final traditional subject is a portrait of a friend. Now, these three subject matters really baffles my mind because we've spent so long. I mean, 100 years, we've spent 100 years in art history terms trying to get away from the classicism, try to get away from the traditional styles of art. And here are the cubists going right back to it. Okay, so let me introduce you to violin and palette. What do you see in this painting? You see the violin, right? It's easy to see, right? What else do you see? Yeah, there you go. There's that palette. How is that palette up on the wall?
Oh, it's a nail.
It's a nail. There's a nail nailed into the wall, and they put the hole of the palette on top of that nail. Anything else you see in this picture?
Music.
Yes, you see sheets of music, right? There's music sheets over here, and then there's a curtain over here. So much of this painting is not realistic, but we can still identify the still life objects fairly easily. And this painting is an example of early analytical cubism. That means you can still see stuff. I want to talk about my favorite subject in this class, which is space. Again, these artists are trying to compress that space. And how are they trying to compress that space in this? One of the ways is by limiting the color and then fragmenting everything. Just like Picasso compressed the space between the women and the fabric behind them by making them all kind of have the same shapes. All right, a new concept I want to teach you guys is the figure ground relationship. In art, the word figure means the same thing as positive space. We looked at black figure vases and red figure vases back with Greek art. And the ground is the same thing as negative space. All right, now look at this painting. What is this a painting of? So I heard a building. Yeah. A house, right? Is it easy to see the house? Is it easy to tell the difference between the house and the background?
Yes.
Yes, right. Now, what is this a painting of?
Person.
Yes, I've trained you to see the person, all right. And over here we have a head shape and a the shoulders and arms are somewhere around here. Now, before I taught you the trick of having to read the Cubist paintings, was this an easy thing to find? It's no, it's very difficult. What makes it so difficult to see the person in this picture? Right, the color, all the colors are the same. All right, and the background is the same color as the foreground, and that kind of muddles things up. Also, I want you to notice how some of the shapes are open. Imagine a square with one of the corners missing, right? The stuff that's in the square can get out easily. So we have a bunch of shapes, but a lot of these shapes we have angles up here, and they are open shapes. And if you think of this as a shoulder and then this as an arm, Look at the open space down here. It doesn't quite connect. So is this space in here, is that the background or is that the arm? All right, we don't know. So that we call this a weak figure ground relationship. And if you can see the difference between the foreground and the background, or the subject and its background, that is a strong figure ground relationship. As the colors are very similar, it creates that lack of depth. The shapes have all been fragmented, which creates a lack of depth. There is very little form in here. By breaking up these shapes into fragments, it's flattening that space. We're not seeing that form that goes back into space. And then we have this contrasting values, but it's very quite flat. You can see right here on this part of the violin, we have a light area and then we have a dark area behind that. That's a little bit of an attempt to bring that violin forward, but still it is a very compressed space. Whoops, that should say unity. All of this unifies it. In fact, if we go back to this one right here, this whole painting is unified because it's all the same. All right, there's no emphasis, and we have a lack of emphasis in this one. So why did they paint this way? This is a radical new analysis of the three-dimensional form and its relation to both literal and pictorial space. What it reminds me of a broken mirror or looking through broken glass. All right, so let's take a violin and let's kind of analyze how they break up this violin. First of all, look at the top of that violin. If we're looking at it from the front, we're going to see this shape up here as an ellipse, but Brock painted it in a more circular way, so as if we're looking at it from the side. And then the keys here are all going different directions, and they shouldn't be. We have the strings that are all broken up. They're going different directions, and if you had cut those strings, they would all become limp. They wouldn't be tight like they are in the painting. The S shapes, yeah. They're evenly spaced as if you were looking directly at the violin, but we are not. And then I want you to also see that we also see the bottom of the violin as well as the front of the violin. And so it's as if we're looking at it from different points of view all at the same time. And again, this is time machine stuff. If you look at it, if you look at it from one angle and then walk around, look at it from another angle, and walk around and look at it from another angle, even if you do this quickly, it's still a matter of seconds that you put it into 1 second. Does that make sense? And then again, we have this reference, this homage to the traditional art making, where you have a green curtain that you can see in the upper right-hand corner. And then the shadow of the nail gives a sense that it is real space. So there's this almost like it's fighting itself. Is it real space or is it not real space? All right, I want you to know this painting right here. Majoli. This is what it looks like, or this is how big it is. So let's take a closer look at it. Picasso is pushing Cubism into new directions. He's moving away from that Renaissance illusion of 3D space. And one way he does that, oh, by the way, early Cubism, late Cubism. Do you see the difference? What do you think the difference is between early Cubism and late Cubism? Yes, more abstract. It's pushing it farther. And also they reduce the color. It's just browns and grays now. But there is something in here. Like if you can't see what it is it a painting of?
A guitar.
All right. Oh, all right. Yes. Perfect. All right. Was that a total guess?
I saw the triangle.
All right. Okay.
It's
All right.
guitar.
All right. Yes. So here's one way to look at a Cubist painting. You look at it and try to find anything recognizable. And you said guitar, and that's where we're going to start. All right. So if it's a guitar, what else do you think is in the picture?
I see two.
Right. It'd be like a person holding it, right? So you look for, and then up there, you see like it's a little bit busier here in the center than it is in the upper corners. Do you see that?
Yeah.
All right. So there's a head there. All right. And with the head, what do you have below the head?
A neck,
A neck and
a body.
shoulders. You see that horizontal line
Yes.
implies shoulders. All right. Then down here, we have these curves. Those are the curves of an armchair. So they're sitting in a chair. And we have these lines right here. This chair has tassels on it. All right. Right. Well, that's what the experts say. So this is like a new language. This is a new way of looking, a new way of considering art. And you can think of Cubism as an attempt to create a new language for representation. And it's difficult to understand this new language. So let's take A Woman with a Guitar by Vermeer. You look at it and immediately you see what it is. It's a woman playing guitar. And you could look at it and say, oh, that's pretty, and then move on. All right. But this one, you have to think about it. You have to think, what am I looking at? What is all this? Why would they paint this? And so that creates a conversation with you and the artwork. So it gives us a deeper understanding of the subjects. Because we have to consider what it is first. Because it is abstract, we think about it harder. Thus, we have a deeper understanding. It gives us more things to think about than the limited views that traditional representation paintings can supply. When we consider what a cubist painting represents, we engage in an intellectual or conceptual activity rather than merely perceptual or a visual one. The limited gray and brown palette enhances this intellectual approach by denying us the sensual pleasures of color. Okay, something else I want to point out in this painting is, did you notice the majoli? All right, earlier when we were looking at it. This is new. He's painting majoli, a word, on top of the painting. Right? Are words flat or do they go deep in the space?
Flat.
They're flat. He's flattening. He's painting it right on there, and he's flattening the image. That's a reminder that we're looking at a picture plane, right? So it's another attempt to flatten. The words "ma jolie" means "my pretty one" in French, and it's accompanied by a musical staff and a treble clef, and it refers to a popular song of the day. And this is another link between Cubism and music. Also, Picasso's nickname for his current girlfriend was Ma Jolie. And before you say, "Oh, he was a womanizer," so yeah, right. All right. So adding the text to the painting is very similar to Toulouse-Lautrec. Even though Lautrec was making posters, which was low art, people saw his images as high art because he was a painter. So Lautrec added text as a form of advertising, but Lautrec's posters were a bridge between high and low art. Now Picasso blurs the lines between high and low art, and he's mixing high and low culture together. He's using a standardized stencil format, and this suggests a partially visible posters and painted signs. So the text is neither the foreground or the background. It too flattens the space. So at this stage, the two artists were creating art very similar to each other. They're using the same pictorial language, and they stopped signing their artworks, which makes it very difficult for people to know which one is which. And for Picasso and Braque, these paintings, this later version of Cubism, is the closest they wanted to get to pure abstraction or non-objective art. They were still enjoying having subjects in their artwork, even though it was difficult to find them. So I also want you to know the difference between early Cubism, early analytical Cubism, and late analytical Cubism. Early Cubism is much more friendly to the brain. You can see what it is. It's easier to spot. You got it? Oh, and then also, look at the dates, though, between early and late. We're talking like a year.